CBS News has confirmed that Donald Trump will pick Andy Pudzer to be his labor secretary. He is the CEO of CKE Restaurants, which owns the fast food restaurants Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. Pudzer was an advisor for Donald Trump's campaign, and he's a firm opponent of the minimum wage. So joining me now to talk about all this is Bloomberg Markets reporter Dani Burger. Good to see you, Dani.
Good to see you, too.
So Pudzer would be the first corporate CEO to be named labor secretary. He's battled with labor unions. He doesn't want an increase in the minimum wage. He believes in automation, in fact, doing away with workers altogether. Could this sort of announcement change the makeup of the Labor Department?
I mean, absolutely. This is a really stark contrast to Obama's administration in the Labor Department. So Obama, his labor secretary, very much so was, let's prop up the workers, let's put all the power with the workers. So with Pudzer, this is sort of a shift back. Yes, he hasn't been a politician before, but he, as you say, has been very outspoken. So we know where he stands. This is going to be very much back to Bush era, putting the power with the employers, pulling back regulations. He doesn't want a minimum wage. Again, he wants all that power to rest with the employers.
The other interesting, I think, point of this announcement is if he's confirmed, he's going to inherit what is a very good labor environment. We've had the lowest unemployment in nearly 10 years. How does that square with what Donald Trump has been saying on the campaign trail?
Right. So, I mean, it's been said before that Donald Trump stands to sort of benefit and brag and say, hey, this was my doing. But one thing that I think is really interesting about this is so Pudzer doesn't want a minimum wage, but Donald Trump is saying that he wants to create more jobs. And if you believe the economists, we're near full employment. So what happens when there aren't as many people out there to take all these jobs that Donald Trump says that he's going to create? They're going to have to bump up the government minimum wage in order to get workers. It's a supply and demand kind of thing. So he says he's not for the minimum wage, but they're going to run into a very tough situation if Donald Trump, what he says, comes true and he's creating all these jobs. They're going to kind of have to raise the minimum wage in order to attract workers.
And it is fascinating that Donald Trump is fighting on Twitter with a union worker, and now you're bringing in a guy to be the labor secretary who is anti-union.
Right. Yeah. That union worker had some very colorful words to say about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's interesting because Donald Trump ran on this populist platform, being for the workers, you know, wanted to, you know, the minimum wage worker really wanted to lift them up. But that doesn't really square so much with where Pudzer stands and honestly where the GOP itself stands. So, of course, Donald Trump can change his mind once he's in office. But, you know, Pudzer's for automation. He talked about in his restaurants really looking at automation. And that's, you know, the reason that coal jobs have disappeared is because of changing technology. But yet Trump wants to bring coal jobs back in. So there's a lot of things that don't really square with what Donald Trump stands for. But again, this is a guy who's known for, you know, changing his mind, being really receptive to other people, what they're saying. So we might be in store for sort of moving away from that populist message and getting more sort of on your classic GOP, putting the power towards the employers.
It is remarkable that, so for labor secretary, you want somebody who is anti-unions. For the Small Business Administration, you've put up somebody who runs, whose husband at least runs an enormous business, the World Wrestling Entertainment company. And it just seems like it's almost sort of topsy-turvy what's happening right now. We've got all of these individuals that, you know, he's talked about draining the swamp, but he seems to be front-loading his cabinet with CEOs or multimillionaires and generals.
Right. Well, I mean, Pudzer is a particularly interesting case because, you know, you could say, oh, here's a guy, he's an outsider, he's not from Washington. But the reason that this department was built for the government was to give a voice to the little guys, really give a voice to the workers. So when you put someone in charge who's at the CEO level, that sort of is not really what the purpose, or at least the intended purpose when this department was first created for it to do. And I mean, he's going to have a bit of a conflict of interest here that's going to be a hurdle for him getting confirmed. I mean, he's essentially going to be in charge of the department that would investigate his business if they were to have any sort of workers' rights violations or any sort of pay violations. So that's going to be, you know, I think that people are definitely going to call for him to recuse himself from his business, you know, much like Donald Trump is being asked to do the same thing. So definitely some hurdles to clear here.
Like Donald Trump, Pudzer favors repealing Obamacare. And in Wall Street Journal op-ed, I want to read what he wrote in it. He blamed the rising health insurance premiums for reductions in restaurant revenues, writing, combined with the economic advantages of eating at home due to lower grocery store prices, we are experiencing what you might call a government-mandated restaurant recession. What's your take on that?
Well, you know, I've followed restaurant stocks a lot, and a lot of these fast food companies aren't doing well. I mean, Chipotle isn't doing well. That's for other reasons.
Because people are getting sick.
Right, right. That, you know, Obamacare could help that, actually. But the thing is this is a broader trend in the market. And to say that it's because of Obamacare, I mean, honestly, that's a really hard argument to make. There's been a trend to sort of get away from the fast food places. I mean, you have companies like Kellogg's trying to make their cereal more healthy. I mean, they're not out there saying that Obamacare is the reason that, you know, people aren't buying my food. It's more this trend towards health. So I think that there is perhaps a correlation here, but not necessarily causality.
What and how are the markets responding to some of these choices?
So far, I mean, Wall Street is pretty thrilled just about rolling back all of the regulations. They think that with infrastructure spending, he's going to be a boon to small cap companies. So far, the markets are pretty pleased. But you know, again, it's kind of ludicrous, I think, that traders are starting to place their bets on what's happening next year, because it could come a time where perhaps some of these picks does hurt the labor market. You know, a lot of economists have been kind of concerned that perhaps the bull market has run on for too long and something's got to give. But yet traders are very happy, again, really zeroing in on regulation and infrastructure spending. So if that doesn't play out, I think people are going to start looking at these appointments more critically and saying, is this going to help the industry? And perhaps it won't, and perhaps the bull market has run out of steam, and Donald Trump's appointments are only going to further hinder that.
To be continued. Dani Burger, always great to have you. Thank you.